This sword has an extraordinary full name, the triumphant harbinger of dawn that points towards victory. Only one has ever fallen by this blade on the battlefield. One night, the bearer drew the sword triumphantly. The night sky lit up as bright as day, pinpointing his precise location. Arrows rained down upon him. Leap, the master swordsman Skyrider did, from the heights of Jueyun Karst. He pierced the clouds as the winds hollered by his ears, but what followed was the sound of bone shattering. What he had hoped for was something swordsmanship could not bring him. He pawned the sword for medicine, but die did not, his dream of flight. Feeling defeated, it dawned on the Skyrider that there are such things that the swordsmanship cannot achieve. So instead of believing in his swordsmanship, he turned to the sword itself. Bigger is always better, and swords are no exception, he thought. In the grand Guyun stone forest, he embraced his grand ending. His dream of flight came to an end, but his sword and story would never fade. Rumored to be a legendary sword of Liyue, it was said its sheath was made with eaglewood, decorated with mica, and engraved with the imagery of war. This priceless sheath, however, was lost. To the blade, the sheath was its prison, keeping it from its true purpose. The blade is so sharp that its victims would only realize they had been struck an hour later. It is said that Kunwu forged this prized sharp sword in just one day, though he worked all day and all night to do so. But when Kunwu's aged master saw his apprentice's work, he clenched his fist, sighed in anguish, and beat the ground with his staff. Oh, pitiful is this most merciless thing in all the world! The master let out a final, long sigh, and hobbled away. Kunwu pondered his master's words for 3 days, and did not touch a single blade in that time. Then he spent a whole year painstakingly carving an eaglewood sheath. Kunwu thought that an elegant and opulent scabbard would surely suffice to subdue the wildness and violence of the blade. But then the prized sword was lost among the common folk. The sharp blade survived, but all that remained of the scabbard was its story. For the sharp blade seeks only to bathe in the blood of its victims, and no sheath can be made that will curb this desire. An ancient prototype sword from Liyue's arsenal. This batch number is faded and no records exist to confirm the date of production. A swirling cloud motif is etched into the body of the blade, which gives it a faint golden glow in the sunlight as it swings through the air. It is said that the bladesmith behind the weapon reached the extent of their abilities and were forced to innovate. Yun Hui, head of the House of Yun's family forge, approached renowned craftsman Han Wu. With the combined expertise from both sides, Han Wu drew up designs for a new series of weapons simply named the prototypes. The very first sword made following this design already had the feel of a formidable weapon. When trying out the sword at Mount Tianheng, Han Wu accidentally dropped it on the ground. The sword responded by unleashing a swirling tornado of energy that cut a 12-inch deep hole in the solid mountain rock. Han Wu took it as a sign from the heavens. He declared, "This sword shall be named Rancor, Destroyer of Rocks." The whole world flocks to the commercial port of Liyue, much to the city's pride. With the tides of people also come exotic treasures. This great sword is expertly made with the finest materials. It is unique in that the edge closest to the wielder has been left dull. The dull edge is said to have been used as a hilt, enabling the wielder to switch forms by constantly shifting hand positions in combat. Though it is rarely acknowledged, this great sword was in fact a foreign bladesmith's labor of love. The bladesmith knew himself to be dull of wit, and was anxious that the blade should not follow suit. Hence, he worked painstakingly on sharpening and balancing his beloved blade. Sparks flew as the bladesmith worked through many sleepless nights. The sword was recast and retempered countless times, All the while his mind was consumed with the hope of his lover's return, as well as his untold anxiety for her well-being. After the war is over, the bladesmith would ponder briefly, each time he paused for breath. Will this blade still be of use to her? Will she even make it home safely? These thoughts would linger in his mind for but a moment before he cast them aside and refocused his full attention on the blade. Indulging irresolvable anxieties was a futile endeavor. Better to focus his faculties on creating the perfect welcome home gift. Finally, the day came when the triumphant expeditionary force entered the city gates, their monstrous foes defeated at last. But the bladesmith had not had time to carve his lover's name onto the blade's body. With no time to lose, he grabbed the sword and rushed to meet his lover on the occasion of her return. Unfortunately, what would transpire next was to be an unbearable anticlimax. As the warrior removed her helmet, long, soft hair flowed down. She was growing her hair out, and hence would never need to wield a blade again for the rest of her days. Meanwhile, she had brought her lover a gift, too, a shiny new hunting bow. "Romance is dead. I have wasted all these years making you this great sword, and now you don't even need it." The bladesmith was thoroughly miserable, and would not stop complaining about the unfairness of it all. But his efforts had by no means been in vain. At least he had finally succeeded in making a blade of the very finest quality. As the nights deepened, the pulsing of its gills translates as such. Well now, I was undoubtedly dead when I left the sea. My heart ceased to beat, the whites of my eyes showed. I gave off a rank stench. I mean, for a fish, this has to be death, right? Now these old bones were the strongest among all mackerel. I was also once the strongest being in all the shallow seas, and even sea beasts, whales, and sharks were no match for my might. And yet, even I would meet my match. It was that kurage, or perhaps you might call them the jellyfish. Why, they just float along with the tide, and yet they can deflect any and all impacts. So then did I forsake the path of strength, taking up the path of the jellyfish after a long, long life. I became able to control every organ in my body, so I stopped my own heart, and was not mistaken for fresh fish and sliced open. You may think that I am not but a salted fish, 'tis true, but allow me to become your strength. Now then, you who wield this old one. When all the waters flow into the sea, when the final stars go out, when everything returns to the primordial ocean whence they came, would you try yourself against me? A long time ago, in a place far, far away, tragedy struck. Brothers took arms against each other. One among them was a great archer. After suffering a humiliating defeat, he made a vow. Until I have brought down my enemies, until I have pierced their throats and made their blood run dry, I shall not clean my feet. And so, the great archer fell a prey to a foot infection. A recurved bow exquisitely made from wood, bones, and animal tendons. In the hands of a masterful archer, it can shoot down eagles in flight. It is the pride of a hunter, and proof of mastery. Pity the innocent eagles. One who wished to improve the range and accuracy of slingshots discovered that power increases range, but costs accuracy. So slingshot rocks were replaced with long wooden poles that sported feathers for stability. The slingshot's limbs were lengthened and the ends recurved to increase pull. It then dawned on him that he had made a bow. He had a very, very long dream. He dreamed that he and everyone else had gone on a long, long journey into a land where green grass grew and where soulful songs were sung. He dreamed that he sang along with the gentle people of this land and danced in the skies with the dragon as beauteous as a jewel. And when he opened his eyes, he was in the sky above a mountain, swept by roaring snowstorms. The green, tranquil land had already been painted crimson by fire and blood, and the song of that sky-blue bard's lyre was almost drowned in the howling tumult, and that bejeweled, lovely dragon, like a tender lover, had now pierced his neck through with its sharp fangs. "Farewell, mother, my journey is ended. I shall sleep beneath this white, shining silver, and perhaps this, too, is good. Farewell, O lovely bard, and farewell, O lovely dragon. Would that we had met in a different place and time, to meet, to sing and dance together." So he thought, most sincerely, as he lay dying. Now then, this great blessing that pulses through my veins, and the lovely sight of the dark universe that gave me birth, they are now yours to inherit. This version of the Magic Guide generated much controversy when published. In addition to the defiance of basic common sense seen in Chapter 7, Principles of the Animal Element, errors can also be observed even concerning the basic principles of the hydro and electro elements. Evidently, this book was not peer-reviewed before publishing. Nevertheless, this book is still the most authoritative guide to magic in existence. 5 heroes embarked on a journey to slay the evil dragon. For honor, the master swordsman. For research, the knowledgeable sorceress. For bounty, the swashbuckling mercenary. For vengeance, the dead-eye marksman. For stories, the grand novelist. A lotus proceeds from my mouth, and flowers bloom on the page. My words are wise and clear, and my thoughts are sharp like lightning. I joined this party because I couldn't find a job, and anybody could be a copywriter. But I'm no writer, just a regular fellow in his mid-20s without an honest job. A mediocre work of fiction telling the tale of an ordinary fellow who finds himself in another world after death. The world is filled with dangers. Steel monsters as vast as galaxies lurk beneath the ground and devour people in the thousands. But there also exists a powerful being who can make the room comfortable in any season and turn the night into day with a snap of his fingers. This is a story as groundless as it is meaningless. It only shares one thing in common with the real world. All the precious metals are owned by a handful of individuals, who keep them locked up in a safe box. Legend has it that there is a group of islands somewhere far away in the middle of a foggy sea, and this place is called the Golden Apple Archipelago. They say that the cute and peace-loving Dodo clan lives together on the many islands, and they have no troubles with the rest of the world. The Dodo clan are kind and playful creatures, and they love to tease each other and play with each other, and none of them ever get bored or sad. Dodoco, they call each other, and that means the best of friends. But just as dandelion seeds will one day leave the embrace of their stalk and go with the wind, every Dodoco will one day ride the wind in the waves and travel to the wider world on an adventure, searching for a 4-leaf clover. Why must they do this? It's because, having lived for a long time on the Golden Apple Archipelago, the Dodocos can no longer recognize each other. They're all Dodocos, and they all look the same after all, so there's no you or me for all of them. But only the red, blazing 4-leaf clover can let them know the true meaning of Dodoco and tell each other apart, thus allowing them to play freely with all their friends. At least, that's what Mom says. She can do just about anything. So in order to understand what makes a true Dodoco, they leave their good friends and go to faraway places and make new good friends and become their Dodoco too. They'll see all kinds of nice things, hear all kinds of interesting stuff, meet lots of friends, and one day, when their friends are looking at them at a time when no one expects it, that's when the blazing, sparkling 4-leaf clover will appear. And that's why when a fiery Dodoco from the Golden Apple Archipelago tumbles into the sea or leaps into the wind before drifting far, far away, that means that a lucky child is about to meet their bestest friend ever. The small, precious book was given by the freest mother in the world to the luckiest daughter in the world. It chronicles the countless adventures that Dodoco had before meeting her, and the adventures that she and Dodoko have had since. Bigger and better adventures filled with sparks, splashes, treasure, and lots of friends.